Your body decided how it was going to react half a second before you thought anything. That tension in your stomach when you walked into that room, that tightness in your chest when someone raised their voice, that impulse to run without knowing why. They didn't come from your mind. They came from memories your cells have been holding onto for years, maybe decades, maybe generations, and you don't even know they exist. Everyone's been through this. Being in a safe situation, and your body reacting like it's in danger, or wanting something good, and feeling your entire body lock up. This isn't self-sabotage. It's not lack of faith. It's cellular memory. Biological information recorded in your tissues, commanding reactions before you have a chance to choose. And here's what science discovered. The quantum field doesn't read your mental intention. It reads the vote of your cells. And as long as your cells are operating with old files, that's what's going to collapse into your reality. But these memories aren't permanent, they can be rewritten. And it all starts with understanding how your cells really work. Your cells aren't just biological structures keeping your body running. They're living archives. Microscopic databases recording every significant experience that passes through this body. Every trauma, every joy, every intense emotion leaves a mark. I'm not talking about visible scars or wounds you can touch. I'm talking about epigenetic markers, tiny molecular tags that attach to your DNA and change how your cells behave from that point forward. Think of it this way. Your DNA is like a giant book with all the instructions for how your body should function. But epigenetic markers are like post-it notes stuck on the pages of that book, saying read this part with fear, or contract when this happens, or stay alert here. They don't change the words in the book. They don't permanently alter your genetic code, but they completely change how the book is read. And here's what science discovered over the last 20 years. These markers don't appear out of nowhere. They're created by experiences. A study done with children of Holocaust survivors showed something remarkable. These people who never lived through concentration camps, who were born decades after the war, carried stress markers in their DNA that were identical to their parents. Markers that only appear in those who went through extreme trauma. How is this possible? Because the parents' cells recorded the trauma experience so deeply that they passed that information forward. As if the body said, this world is dangerous. My children need to know this from day one. And it's not just trauma that does this. Intense joy, deep love, moments of absolute safety, all of this also leaves cellular marks. The problem is that most people carry far more markers of pain than pleasure, because our evolutionary brain was programmed to record danger with much more intensity than safety. It makes sense from a survival standpoint. Forgetting where there's food is annoying, but forgetting where there's a predator can get you killed. So your cells learn to record the negative in permanent ink and the positive in pencil that erases easily. Here's what this means in practice. Let's say 15 years ago you went through a brutal rejection. Someone you loved left you in a way that tore you apart. At the time, you cried, you suffered. Eventually, you moved on. Consciously, you got over it. But your cells? They didn't get over it. They recorded that experience as biological data. Rejection equals survival danger. And now, 15 years later, every time you enter a situation where there's even the slightest possibility of rejection, a new date, a work presentation, even a casual conversation, your cells consult the file. And what do they find? Rejection equal danger. So the body triggers the automatic response. Chest tightness, urge to flee, throat closing, hands sweating. And the conscious mind sits there confused, thinking, why am I reacting like this? This doesn't make sense. I got over this. But it does make sense. It makes perfect sense. Not to your rational mind, but to your cells that are still operating with the 15-year-old file. The difference between brain memory and cellular memory is this. Brain memory is conscious. It's what goes through your head when someone asks what happened that day. Cellular memory is unconscious. It's what the body feels without the mind needing to remember. That's why sometimes you feel a knot in your stomach when entering a certain place and don't even know why. Or you automatically tense your shoulders when someone raises their voice, even if they're not yelling at you. Or you go on maximum alert when things are going too well, like the body's waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's not paranoia. It's not weakness. It's cellular memory. It's the body remembering what the conscious mind forgot, or what it never fully processed. And here's the part most people don't understand. These memories aren't just stored in the brain. They're scattered throughout your entire body. In the muscle tissue that contracts every time you feel threatened. In the intestinal cells that constrict when you get anxious. In the heart that races before you even understand why. Every organ, every tissue, every cell holds a piece of the story. And when these cells communicate with each other, which happens trillions of times per second, they share these files. They vote on how to react now based on what they lived through before. But these memories don't stay passive waiting to be accessed. They actively vote on your reality, second by second, and this vote happens long before the rational mind has any chance to interfere. Right this moment, 37 trillion cells are voting on your reality. It's not a metaphor. It's biological mechanics. Every cell in your body functions like a tiny judge that consults its memory files and casts a vote. This is safe or this is danger. And when I say every cell, I mean literally. 37 trillion votes happening simultaneously. And here's what most people don't realize. This vote happens before your rational brain processes anything. Half a second before. Seems like a short time, but in biological terms, half a second is an eternity. It's enough time for your entire body to have already decided how it's going to react, while your conscious mind is still trying to understand what's happening. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you're in a work meeting. Your boss asks you a direct question in front of everyone, and before you even process the words he said, your stomach clenches, your hands start sweating, your throat goes dry. This didn't happen because you thought, I'm going to get nervous now. It happened because your 37 trillion cells consulted the files, saw public attention more authority equal risk, and voted en masse, danger. And then your body reacted. All of this in 0.5 seconds. Before the rational mind even had a chance to say, calm down, it's just a question. That's why so many reactions seem irrational. Because they're not rational. They're cellular. The person who grew up with an authoritarian father might feel their entire body contract when someone in a position of power speaks firmly, even if the person isn't being aggressive. The cells consult the file. Firm voice, more authority, equal danger. And vote. Flee, protect yourself, make yourself small. The person who went hungry as a child might feel inexplicable anxiety when seeing a low bank balance, even with food in the fridge, even knowing rationally that everything's fine. The cells consult the file. Low resources, equal survival risk. And vote, maximum alert, anxiety, tension. The person who was cheated on might feel their heart race when their current partner takes a while to respond to a message, even if there's no real reason for suspicion. The cells consult the file. Delayed response, equal imminent abandonment. And vote. Prepare for the worst. None of these reactions is irrational. They're perfectly rational. If you understand that the rationality isn't in the conscious mind, it's in the cells operating with historical data. The problem is that this historical data has no expiration date. Your cells don't know that was 10 years ago. To them, it's current information. It's like the body's running 2005 software in 2025 and doesn't understand why things aren't working right. And here's what really matters to understand. The quantum field doesn't read your mental intention. It reads the cellular vote. You can be mentally affirming, I am abundant, I am prosperous, I'm open to receive. But if your 37 trillion cells are voting, resources equal danger, money equal problem, success equal target, guess which frequency the quantum field's going to pick up? The cells. Always. Because frequency isn't thought. Frequency is biological state. It's the sum of all the electrical, chemical, and electromagnetic signals your body emits every second, and those signals are determined by cellular votes, not by your conscious intention. That's why someone can be doing everything right, visualizing, affirming, meditating, and still feel like nothing changes, because the mind is saying one thing, and the body is voting for another, and the body always wins. Always. Because the body is emitting 37 trillion signals while the mind is emitting one. It's 37 trillion to 1. There's no competition. Now, before you feel like this is hopeless, take a deep breath. Because here's the turning point. These cells aren't sabotaging you. They're protecting you, based on the information they have. Old information, yes, sometimes completely outdated. But the intention is protection, not sabotage. When you understand this, everything changes, because then you stop fighting against your body and start working with it. You stop trying to convince your mind and start updating your cells. But to do this, you need to understand how the body can decide so quickly, how it processes information in milliseconds, while the mind takes seconds, and the answer is hidden in places in the body most people don't even imagine have their own intelligence. Turns out there's not just one brain inside you, there are 3. When people say use your head, they're giving you the wrong advice, because the head is the slowest place in your body for processing information. That's right. The brain in your skull, the one everyone thinks runs everything, is actually the last to know what's happening. Let me show you what neuroscience discovered in recent decades. You have 3 intelligent nervous systems operating at the same time. The cranial brain, yes, the one you know, but also the enteric brain, and which is in your gut, and the cardiac brain, which is in your heart. And here's the shocker. These last 2 respond first, in milliseconds. While the head brain is still processing, the gut and heart have already decided. Let's start with the gut. The enteric nervous system has 100 million neurons, 100 million, distributed throughout your entire digestive tract. To put it in perspective, that's more neurons than in your entire spinal cord. And those neurons aren't just there to digest food. They process emotion, memory, sensory information. They make decisions. That's why when something's wrong, you feel it in your stomach first. That clenching, that knot, that feeling of something's off. It's not mystical intuition. It's your gut brain reading environmental signals and sending an alert before your head brain processes. Think about it this way. You're in a conversation with someone who seems trustworthy. The words are right. The tone is polite. Everything seems fine. But something's wrong, and you feel it in your stomach. A discomfort you can't explain. It's not paranoia. It's your gut picking up microsignals, body language, micro-expressions, subtle tone of voice, and comparing them with cellular memory files, and voting. Don't trust. All of this happens in 200 milliseconds. While the rational brain is still listening to the person's words and thinking, seems like a good person, that's why that visceral feeling is almost always right. Because it's not contaminated by rational thought, desire, expectation. It's pure response based on biological data. Now let's go to the heart. The heart has 40,000 neurons. It's not just a pump that pushes blood, it's a processing organ. These neurons form what scientists call the cardiac brain, and it communicates directly with the cranial brain through the vagus nerve. But here's the detail. The communication isn't top-down, it's bottom-up. The heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. This means the heart is constantly influencing how the brain interprets reality, and the heart responds to emotions before you even consciously feel them. A fascinating study showed this. They had people play a card game where some cards were good and others bad, and they measured the heart's response. Guess what they discovered? The heart started accelerating 4 to 7 seconds before the person turned over a bad card, before any visual cues, before any conscious thought. The heart already knew. How? Nobody's sure. But the most accepted theory is that the heart is reading the quantum field around it, picking up information the rational brain can't process, and responding first. That's why when you're about to make an important decision and feel your heart racing, it's not random anxiety, it's your heart warning you. Or when you're near someone and feel your chest tighten for no apparent reason, it's not imagination. It's the cardiac brain processing that person's energetic frequency and voting. Don't get closer. Now put all three together. Cranial brain, 2 to 3 seconds to process. Enteric brain, 200 milliseconds. Cardiac brain, 4 to 7 seconds before the event. What does this mean? That your entire body is constantly reading reality, consulting cellular memories, and reacting. And the conscious mind is the last to know. That's why so many times the rational decision seems right in your head, but the body resists. It's not self-sabotage. It's the body saying, I have data your mind doesn't have. And most of the time, the body is right, because it's reading layers of information the conscious mind can't even access. Facial micro-expressions that last 40 milliseconds. Variations in tone of voice that happen at almost imperceptible frequencies. Changes in another person's electromagnetic field. All of this is being processed by the gut and heart brains in real time, while the head brain is still thinking, should I trust this person? And here's what nobody told you about manifestation. When you try to manifest with just your mind, you're using the slowest processor. When you try to think positive but your gut is contracted and your heart is racing, guess which frequency is being transmitted? The body's. Always the body's. Because the body is emitting measurable electromagnetic signals that extend feet around you, and those signals are read by the quantum field. Not your mind's thoughts. That's why someone can repeat affirmations for hours and feel like nothing changes, because their mouth is saying one thing, but their gut and heart are transmitting another, and the quantum field doesn't hear words. It reads biological frequency. It reads the vote of the cells. It reads what the three brains are deciding in real time. And here's where it gets even deeper. Because those memories your three brains are consulting, they didn't all start with your own experiences. Some of them aren't even yours. They came from before, from long before. They crossed entire generations to reach your cells, carrying fears, patterns, and automatic responses you never personally lived. But your body treats them as if they were yours. That fear you feel and can't explain where it came from, that constant vigilance that doesn't make sense with your life story, that feeling of scarcity that persists even when you have enough. It might not be yours. It might be inherited. Epigenetics discovered something that completely changed what we know about memory. Traumatic experiences don't stay locked in the person who lived them. They cross generations. They leave markers on DNA that are passed from parents to children, from grandparents to grandchildren, sometimes skipping entire generations to appear in a great-grandchild who never heard the story. But their body remembers. The cells remember. I'll give you a real example that science documented. In the Netherlands, in 1944, there was a devastating famine caused by World War II. People died of starvation in the streets. Pregnant women went through extreme hunger. And when those children were born, scientists started following them over the decades. What they discovered was shocking. Those children who never went hungry after birth, who grew up with food available, had abnormally high rates of obesity, diabetes, and metabolic problems. Their bodies were programmed to store every calorie as if famine was still imminent, even decades later, even in abundance, and it didn't stop there. The children of those children, the third generation, born in the 70s and 80s, also carried the same markers. They never saw hunger. Their parents never saw hunger after infancy, but the cells still remembered the winter of 1944 and reacted as if scarcity were real. This is cellular memory crossing generations. Now think about what this means for you. If your grandparents lived through extreme poverty, if your parents grew up afraid of losing everything, if someone in your lineage went through war, persecution, abandonment, violence, your cells might be carrying the memory of it. not as a story they told you, but as an automatic biological response. That's why someone can have grown up middle-class stable and still feel panic when the bank balance drops. It's not dramatic. It's not lack of gratitude. It's the body remembering a scarcity the grandparents lived, and that got recorded in the DNA as resources equal fragile survival. That's why someone can be in a secure relationship and still feel terror of abandonment for no apparent reason. It's not irrational insecurity. It's the cellular memory of a grandmother who was left alone to raise children, or a great-grandfather who lost everything suddenly. The body is operating with data from 3 generations ago and treating it as current. Here's what many people don't understand. This doesn't mean you're destined to repeat your ancestors' traumas. It's not destiny, it's information. Information that can be rewritten, but to rewrite it, you first need to understand what you're carrying. It's like trying to fix a computer problem without knowing there's a virus running in the background. You'll keep trying to fix the consequences, without ever touching the root cause. And the root cause might be 3 generations back. Studies with Holocaust survivors showed the same thing. The children and grandchildren carried post-traumatic stress markers, even never having lived through persecution, altered cortisol levels, hypervigilance responses, difficulty fully relaxing. As if the body were always waiting for danger to arrive, because in cellular memory, the danger never ended. It was just paused. And now you understand why sometimes you feel fears that don't make sense with your life. Why you might have hypervigilance without having lived through direct trauma. Why you might feel like something bad is going to happen, even when everything's going well. It's not premonition. It's not pessimism. It's the body voting based on inherited files. Files that say, safety is temporary, prepare for the worst. And here's the hard part to accept. The body doesn't differentiate lived memory from inherited memory. To it, it doesn't matter if it was 5 years ago or 5 generations ago. If the epigenetic marker is there, it's current information. It's operational data. And as long as it's there, the body will vote based on it. That's why sometimes traditional therapy, which focuses only on your personal history, doesn't completely resolve things. Because you're trying to process a trauma that's not just yours. You're trying to heal a wound that started before you were born. But here's the turning point. You can be the point of interruption. The person who stops the transmission. It's not about erasing what happened to your ancestors. It's about rewriting the cellular code so your children, if you have them, don't inherit the same weight. So the transmission line is cut with you. And this is possible. Because epigenetic memory isn't permanent like genetic mutation. It's flexible. It can be overwritten, with new experiences and consistent ones that create cellular data stronger than the old ones. So if your cells are operating with information from 3 generations ago, if you're carrying fears you didn't live, vigilance you didn't need, scarcity that was never yours, the question that matters now is, can you rewrite this code? Can you update the cell's operating system? And the answer is yes. But not the way most people try. Now, I want you to think about your life and answer. Is there a fear that doesn't make sense? Some automatic reaction that seems disproportionate? It could be fear of scarcity, even with security, constant vigilance, even without real threat, or even difficulty trusting even when everything indicates you can. Leave it in the comments. You don't need to explain the whole story, just describe the feeling. When you share this, you realize you're not alone in this, and you start creating awareness about what you might be carrying. And awareness is always the first step toward real change. The good news. Cellular memory isn't a life sentence. It can be rewritten. The bad news. It's not instantaneous. And it doesn't happen with just the mind. Let me be straight about what doesn't work. Trying to erase the old memory doesn't work. Pretending it doesn't exist doesn't work. Suppressing the reaction every time it appears doesn't work. And definitely repeating affirmations while the body is screaming the opposite doesn't work. Because cellular memory doesn't respond to words. It responds to experience. Think about it this way. Your cells learned, Danger through real experiences, traumatic. Visceral. They're not going to unlearn with pretty phrases. They're going to unlearn with new experiences, real, visceral, that create different data. It's not about erasing the old file. It's about creating a new file that's stronger, more frequent, more recent, until the body consults the new file by default, and the old one becomes just a historical record without operational power. How does this work in practice? Gradual exposure with safety. Let me explain. Let's say your cells carry the memory of rejection, survival danger. Every time you enter a situation where rejection is possible, the body triggers maximum alert. If you try to force high-exposure situations before you're ready, the body will interpret it as confirmation of danger and will reinforce the old memory. But if you create gradual experiences where there's small risk of rejection, and you get through without collapsing, and you notice you survived, the cells start recording new data. Rejection happened, but I didn't die. Then you repeat, and repeat, and repeat. Each time you get through the situation and survive intact, you're writing a new line of cellular code. One experience doesn't rewrite. 10 experiences start creating a new pattern. 100 experiences create a strong file. 1,000 experiences transform the new into the dominant pattern. And here's what's crucial to understand. The body needs to feel safety. Not think about safety. Feel it in the tissue. That's why somatic practices work when mental-only practices don't. Because somatic practices work directly with body sensations. They teach the body to stay with discomfort without collapsing. They teach the cells that feeling fear doesn't mean being in danger. This creates new data. I can feel this and still be safe. And this data, repeated, becomes a file. Another thing that rewrites cellular memory. Consistency. There's no point in having one isolated positive experience surrounded by 1,000 experiences confirming the old pattern. The cells vote by majority. If 95% of experiences confirm, world equal dangerous, and 5% suggest, world equal safe. Guess which file will dominate? So rewriting cellular memory requires changing the ratio, creating more experiences of safety than danger, more moments of presence than escape, more conscious breaths than automatic reactions. And this takes time. Because you're literally changing biology. Studies show it takes between 21 and 90 days of consistent experience to create measurable change in neural patterns. And cellular memory is even deeper than neural patterns. So when someone does a practice for 3 days and says it didn't work, of course it didn't work. 3 days don't compete with 15 years of recorded memory, or 3 generations of inherited trauma, but 90 days of new experience. Consistent. Visceral. That starts changing the game. Now, there's something that needs to be said about emotions during this process. When you start rewriting cellular memory, the body will test. It will bring old emotions to the surface. It will make it seem like things got worse, but they didn't get worse. It's that the cells are processing, releasing, updating. It's like when you clean out an old closet and take everything out before reorganizing. For a moment, the mess is bigger than before. But it's not creating new mess. It's cleaning up the old mess that was hidden. And here's the difference between suppressing and transmuting. Suppressing is pushing the emotion back into the file, without processing. This doesn't rewrite anything. It just adds more pressure to the system. Transmuting is feeling the emotion completely, without identifying with it, without letting it command your actions, but acknowledging it's there, and breathing through it, staying with it, until the body realizes, I can feel this and don't need to react. This creates new data, and new data, repeated, becomes a new file. Each time you feel fear and don't flee, you're teaching the cells. Fear isn't a command. Each time you feel anger and don't explode, you're teaching the cells. Anger isn't mandatory action. Each time you feel sadness and don't collapse, you're teaching the cells. Sadness isn't destruction. And gradually, response by response. Experience by experience, the body updates its operating system, but it has to be consistent. Because cells don't trust sudden change, they trust patterns. If today you choose presence, and tomorrow you go back to automatic reaction, the cells will vote. That was just an accident, back to the pattern. But if you choose presence today, and tomorrow, and the day after, and next week, the cells start voting. This might be the new pattern. And when it becomes a pattern, it becomes reality, not because you thought differently, but because you taught the body to experience differently. And the quantum field responds to that. It responds to the change in biological frequency. It responds to 37 trillion cells voting for something new. Not all at once, but one cell at a time, one vote at a time, until the majority switches sides. And when the majority switches, reality switches, because reality was always determined by cellular voting, not by mental intention. And now you understand why. Your body isn't an obstacle. It never was. It's an ally operating with old information, trying to protect you with 10-year-old data, or 3-generation-old data. And that's not a flaw, it's loyalty. Loyalty to what was lived. But loyalty can be updated when new experiences show that the world has changed, or that you're stronger now, or that you deserve something different from what your ancestors had. The cells will believe that when you experience that. Repeatedly, consistently, viscerally, until it becomes biological truth. And when it becomes biological truth, it becomes quantum truth. Your body always knew. Before the mind processed, before you understood why, before you could name it, the cells were already voting, consulting files of experiences you lived, and some you never lived. Every automatic reaction that seemed irrational now makes sense, because it wasn't your mind malfunctioning. It was your body operating with old data, trying to protect you with information from 10 years ago, or 3 generations ago. And that's not a flaw, it's loyalty. But loyalty can be updated. One experience at a time, one vote at a time, until the majority of cells switches sides. And when the majority switches, reality switches, because reality was always determined by the body's frequency, not the mind's intention. If this video helped you understand why you react the way you do, leave your like. And if you want to keep understanding the real mechanics of manifestation, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now, leave in the comments. Which automatic reaction makes more sense now? It could be something that's always bothered you, something you could never explain. Share it here. Because when you name it, you've already started the rewriting process. And remember this, your body isn't your enemy. It's always been your ally. It was just using the wrong map. Now there's something you need to know. While you're awake, you have conscious control over what you experience, over what new data you create. But there are 8 hours a night where the body is processing reality without conscious supervision. The last 3 minutes before sleep determine whether you'll wake up manifesting the same reality. And the next video shows you exactly how to use those 3 minutes to program your entire night in your favor. Watch it and continue this journey with me.